Have you ever had one of those moments, where you look in the mirror and the person staring back is, well, it's you, technically, but somehow it doesn't quite feel like you?
Mm.
Maybe you've gone through a big life change, perhaps a physical transformation, and you recognize the features, sure, but that sense of self, the familiar you, feels a little lost in translation.
Yeah, it's a really strange feeling, like looking at a stranger who just happens to have your face.
Exactly. It's unsettling. Well, today on the deep dive, we're going to plunge right into that very specific, very profound psychological territory.
Okay.
We're moving way beyond just the surface level stuff, the physical changes, specifically focusing on weight loss, to explore the deep internal shifts that honestly often go unacknowledged.
Right. Things people don't talk about much.
Precisely. We've gathered insights from a really unique and powerful voice in this space, Dan Hollis. We're pretty excited to share his perspectives from a rich collection of his reflections and notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Our mission today really is to move past the simple numbers on the scale, and those dramatic before and after photos we always see.
Right.
We want to delve into the intricate emotional and identity-based landscape that countless people navigate after significant weight loss, but like you said, rarely feel comfortable discussing openly. And Dan Hollis offers a really crucial framework for understanding these often hidden struggles. We'll be uncovering concepts like identity lag, we'll get into that, and exploring the absolutely critical role that a new personal narrative plays in sustaining any long-term change.
Okay.
So prepare to maybe reframe how you think about progress, setbacks, and what it truly means to build a life where you feel you genuinely belong to yourself.
That sounds fascinating. So to really unpack this, let's start with a story. It's a situation I think many of our listeners might recognize in some way.
Okay.
Our sources introduce us to Adrienne. She's 53. And for years, she had that drawer full of gold jeans.
Ah, yes. The gold jeans. We all know them.
Right. Those denim monuments to a future self, often sitting there alongside a history of diets, started, stopped, started again.
Yeah.
But then, for several months, something genuinely shifted for her. With the help of semaglutide, she began seeing real, consistent, tangible progress.
Okay, so the medication was working biologically.
Exactly. Her appetite, which she described as often feeling like this demanding taskmaster, it sort of softened. Her knees, which have been a constant source of pain, hurt less.
Big quality of life changes there.
Huge. And her clothes, as she put it, started whispering instead of screaming. Imagine that feeling.
Wow, yeah. That quiet triumph.
That growing sense of possibility. So, by all outward appearances, things were going incredibly well, like success story, right?
You'd think so. Textbook case.
But then,
Hi.
our sources describe what they call her toothpaste moment.
Okay.
It happened on a totally normal Tuesday morning, completely mundane. She's brushing her teeth just like any other day, same rhythm, same routine, standing there in front of her bathroom mirror. She looks up, and for this prolonged, really disorienting instant, she simply didn't recognize the woman staring back at her.
Whoa.
Her face was thinner. Yeah, the lines around her eyes and mouth were sharper, maybe more defined. Her gaze, as she put it, felt older and newer at the same time.
Older and newer. That's quite a description.
Isn't it? Intellectually, she knew it was her, of course, but the profound, almost gut-wrenching feeling was that she didn't feel like she belonged to her.
Wow. Not triumph then.
No, not at all. It wasn't a moment of self-congratulation. It felt instead like this kind of strange internal disappearance. The physical change was undeniably there, but the emotional recognition, completely absent, vanished.
And this right here, this is precisely the moment Dan Hollis calls identity lag.
Identity lag, okay.
It's such a powerful term because it perfectly captures that disorienting gap. Dan describes it as a situation where your body can change faster than your story. And when that happens, the soul gets confused.
The soul gets confused. That really hits deep.
It does. And it broadens our understanding of what a major life transition like this entails. Most people, quite understandably, assume the absolute hardest part of a physical transformation, especially significant weight loss, is the active process itself, right?
Yeah, the losing part, the discipline, the effort.
The deprivation, the workouts,
Yeah.
all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But Dan's work highlights something really crucial. The true crisis often emerges not in the struggle to lose the weight, but in the moments after it's gone.
After the celebration, kind of.
Exactly. Adrienne wasn't actually mourning the pounds she'd shed. She was, quite deeply, mourning the version of herself who had carried them.
Mourning her old self.
Think about it. That old self had a lifetime of established routines, coping mechanisms, a clear social identity, even if she didn't always like it.
Right, she knew how to operate as that person.
Precisely. She was the one who knew how to maybe command a room with a self-deprecating joke about her size, or which particular sweaters offered the most comfort and coverage in social situations. She was, as our sources so poignantly put it, good at being her old self.
Wow. Yeah. Comfortable in that known identity, even if parts were uncomfortable.
Exactly. And now suddenly, she felt like a body in transition and a mind without a map. This feeling, this identity grief, mourning a lost self, is almost completely unacknowledged by most weight loss programs. They focus on the before and the after, not the confusing during that happens after the after.
That's a profoundly lonely realization. So if I'm hearing you right, the internal narrative, the story we tell ourselves, is literally the bedrock for making the change stick.
Absolutely.
What does this kind of identity grief actually look like in someone's day-to-day life then? Beyond just that internal feeling, how might, say, friends or family notice it, even if the person isn't saying, hey, I feel like I don't know myself?
That's an excellent question because it often manifests in subtle, sometimes confusing ways.
Right.
You might see someone experiencing this identity grief, maybe reverting to old habits despite their physical changes.
Oh, interesting, like subconsciously trying to reconnect.
Exactly. Almost subconsciously trying to get back to that familiar feeling, that known self. They might struggle with social situations where their new body is perceived differently.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they get compliments that feel really disingenuous or just uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, a compliment doesn't land right.
Right. Or navigating new expectations from others that just don't align with their internal sense of who they still feel they are inside.
Yeah.
You might hear them say things like, I still feel like the old me inside,
Huh.
even though their reflection is telling a completely different story.
That sounds exhausting. That constant friction.
It is exhausting. It's this constant friction between the external reality
Yeah.
and their internal perception. And it can be deeply isolating because, let's face it, it's not something easily shared or understood by people who haven't gone through it.
No, definitely not. So this really brings to light a critical tension, doesn't it? The body is transformed, the scale's doing its thing, the biological mechanisms like the semaglutide are working perfectly. But what about that deep internal story, the one we tell ourselves about who we are, our habits, our comfort zones? This is the fascinating dilemma that Dan Hollis dives headfirst into. And it's a gap, as you said, that traditional weight loss approaches just seem to completely miss.
And this is exactly where he offers his core axiom, which is so powerful. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative.
Biology versus narrative. Okay.
This powerfully challenges the common assumption that just achieving the physical change is the end goal, the finish line.
Right, like mission accomplished.
Exactly. Most programs, if we're being honest, really miss this crucial through line, this concept of identity grief that we just talked about. Dan Hollis profoundly observes, and this is a direct quote, "The weight came off. Then I realized I had no idea who I was without it."
Wow, that's heavy.
It is. And this isn't the stuff you see celebrated in the after pictures or, those upbeat social media reels.
Well-
It's the profound silence after the celebration. The quiet, often bewildering reality when the applause dies down and you're left with yourself, newly reshaped maybe, but internally feeling completely unmoored.
That makes so much sense. And it brings up the whole idea of cravings then, doesn't it? If our physical hunger, that sort of biological drive to eat, fades thanks to something like semaglutide,
Mhm.
where does that deeper feeling go, that wanting, that seeking comfort or familiarity? Does it just evaporate?
No, definitely doesn't just vanish.
Yeah.
It's a key insight from Dan Hollis. He explains that hunger doesn't simply disappear, it shapeshifts.
Shapeshifts. Okay, into what?
It transforms into things like memory, confusion, space. Think about it. For years, maybe decades, food wasn't just fuel for many people.
It was comfort, reward.
Comfort, reward, a way to soothe anxiety, a social ritual, a habit. When the biological drive for food is lessened, that physical hunger might subside, yeah. But the emotional hunger, the learned associations, those deeply grooved pathways in our brains, they remain.
They're still there.
They're still there. And if that newly created space, that void where the old cravings used to live, isn't consciously filled with something genuinely nourishing, something beyond just food, well, that original craving, that deep-seated psychological need, will almost inevitably return.
Okay.
Dan puts it very powerfully. People don't relapse into hunger. They relapse into confusion.
Relapse into confusion, not hunger. That's a huge distinction.
Huge. It's confusion about who they are now, what they do now, how they cope without the old default. how they belong in their own skin and their new life.
And in this context, something like semaglutide offers a really powerful tool. It creates a pause, as you mentioned earlier, a reduction in the noise of constant appetite.
It quiets things down.
It can provide this crucial window of opportunity. But as Dan Hollis cautions, this newfound silence, this temporary quiet, can actually be, well, dangerous in a way. Because in that quiet, when the constant distraction of physical hunger is muted, the stories we've maybe buried, the truths we've avoided, the emotions we've perhaps self-medicated with food for years, they tend to rise to the surface.
Okay. The quiet allows other things to be heard.
Exactly. It offers an incredible opportunity for self-discovery, yes, but also a real vulnerability if that space isn't intentionally engaged with, if you're not prepared for what might come up.
Precisely. And to fill that new space, that quiet window Dan talks about, his solution is very clear. You have to build, you scaffold, you consciously stitch new rituals into old routines.
Scaffolding, like in construction.
Exactly like construction. He explains support isn't optional. It's neurobiological scaffolding.
Neurobiological scaffolding. Okay, break that down.
It means literally helping to build and strengthen the new neural pathways and routines in your brain. Just like physical scaffolding helps construct a building until it can stand strong on its own. This support, whether it's therapy, coaching, a support group, developing new daily practices, is absolutely essential for creating a new, sustainable internal structure, especially when your biology is no longer shouting for comfort in the same old way.
So without that support, the new building is vulnerable.
It's vulnerable to collapse. It highlights this profound shift from just relying on willpower, which often fails, to establishing a new, solid neurological foundation for these changes.
That's a powerful way to think about it. So for listeners who might be feeling this space, this sort of quiet window opening up, what are some of the first practical scaffolds they could maybe begin to build?
Yeah, that's a great practical question. Often the very first scaffold is simply awareness and acknowledgement of this identity lag phenomenon. Just knowing it's a common, recognized experience can be incredibly validating.
Takes away some of the what's wrong with me feeling.
Exactly. Practically, people could start by consciously introducing new, non-food-related coping mechanisms or comforts into their daily routine. Things like mindful movement yoga, walking creative hobbies, intentionally seeking deeper social connections, or even simply practicing 5 minutes of quiet reflection each day. Just small things.
Okay. Are there common mistakes people make here when trying to build these new routines without that old biological shout for comfort?
Yeah, common mistake is trying to fill the void with, well, with nothing. Or worse, filling it with more self-criticism, just expecting this new self to magically appear fully formed.
Right. Impatience.
Huge impatience. Another is rushing to adopt a completely new persona without taking the time to actually grieve or integrate parts of the old one. Dan really stresses the importance of starting small, stitching these new elements into the existing fabric of your life, rather than trying to rip everything out and start from scratch all at once.
Stitching, not ripping. I like that. And what's interesting in Adrienne's story, as she worked with Dan, is how he approached it. He didn't rush her. He didn't offer those easy platitudes like, oh, just embrace the new you.
No quick fixes.
None. He simply listened. He offered this rare space for her to actually voice that confusion, that disorientation. He truly understood the depth of what she was experiencing.
That's key. Validation.
He told her the weight loss is just the clearing. The becoming takes longer.
Oh, that's good. The clearing versus the becoming.
Isn't it? It positions the physical change not as the finish line, but just as the initial groundwork for a much deeper, more personal transformation. It's giving permission, really, for the process to be messy and slow.
Indeed. And one really striking aspect of Adrienne's journey, which is a core principle Dan Hollis teaches, is this powerful process of rewriting the names of things.
Rewriting the names. What does that mean exactly?
It sounds simple, but it's not just semantics. It's about fundamentally changing the internal language we use to define our experiences and ultimately ourselves. For Adrienne and for many others Dan works with, this shift was transformative.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, for instance, shame became memory.
Shame became memory. Wow.
Or control became curiosity, and discipline became alignment.
That's incredibly profound. Can you maybe give us a practical example of how Adrienne or someone else might actually undertake this rewriting? What does it feel like in practice to shift from, say, shame about a past eating episode to viewing it simply as memory?
Absolutely. Let's take that shame example. Someone might habitually label past eating behaviors with intense shame, thinking I was weak, I had no control, I failed myself again. This creates this really heavy, self-condemning narrative loop.
Yeah, very negative self-talk.
Totally. Dan helps clients reframe this. So instead of shame, they learn to see that past behavior as memory. It becomes a data point about a time when maybe they were in pain or stressed or coping, and the only way they knew how at that moment, given their circumstances and tools back then.
So it's acknowledging without condemning.
Exactly. It's acknowledging the past without letting it define or condemn the present. The internal talk shifts to something like, okay, I remember that period and understand why I did what I did then, and you know what? I have compassion for that past self. And the good news is, now I have new tools, new strategies.
That feels much more empowering.
It is. Similarly, control over food, which often feels really restrictive and anxiety-inducing, like this constant battle.
Yeah, white-knuckling it.
Right.
Yeah.
That can transform into curiosity.
Right.
So instead of rigid rules, I must not eat that, the question becomes, what truly nourishes my new self, physically and emotionally? What does my body actually need right now? What feels good? It becomes an inquiry, not a command.
Less struggle, more exploration.
Precisely. And discipline, which often carries this heavy connotation of self-punishment or forcing yourself.
Right, like it's a chore.
Exactly. That becomes alignment. It's about aligning your actions with your deeper values and the person you are genuinely becoming. It's a shift from feeling like you have to exert external enforcement on yourself to finding internal congruence. Does this action align with where I want to go?
That reframing, that relanguaging sounds like a critical, active step in building a new self that actually feels authentic and sustainable, not forced.
It's absolutely crucial.
And a huge part of this process for Adrienne, as our sources really emphasize, was gaining what Dan calls permission.
Permission, yes.
Permission to simply not know who she was for a while. Permission to be awkward in that uncomfortable in-between space. Permission to stumble, to feel uncertain, to not have it all figured out.
Which is so counter to the usual narrative of transformation, right?
Right.
Which is supposed to be smooth and triumphant.
Totally. And permission to build a new story without feeling like she had to completely burn the old one down, like she had to totally erase who she once was. It's about allowing for self-compassion during this time of profound internal reconstruction, recognizing that transformation isn't an overnight flip of a switch.
It's integration, not annihilation.
Exactly. And the subtle but truly significant change in Adrienne's journey, it came back to her interaction with the mirror.
Okay.
Initially, remember, she flinched. She felt that deep, gutting disconnect. Over time, though, she didn't flinch anymore. Now, she didn't necessarily smile yet, perhaps, but she stood there longer, just held her own gaze for a bit longer each time.
Just being present with herself.
Yes. And that, Dan would say, is something profoundly meaningful. It's a small, tangible step towards accepting, integrating, and eventually actually belonging to this new self. That subtle shift from rejection to just sustained attention is powerful.
It really is. And this also leads us directly into how we perceive setbacks, doesn't it? Because they are an inevitable part of any long-term change process.
Absolutely. Nobody's path is linear.
Right. But most people often view failure in the context of weight loss, or any big change, really, as a sign of weakness, a lack of discipline, or feeling like they're fundamentally broken somehow.
Yeah, the I blew it narrative.
Exactly. Which really raises an important question. What if we've been looking at failure all wrong? What if our conventional understanding of it is actually sabotaging our long-term success?
Okay, how does Dan suggest we look at it?
Well, Dan Hollis offers a truly transformative reframing here. He says, quite simply, failure isn't the end. It's a message, a moment of feedback.
Not an endpoint, but a message.
Exactly. He insists we stop seeing it as this big dramatic shame story and instead view it as a data point, just information, something we can observe objectively, learn from, and then build upon, rather than using it as an indictment of our character or our worth.
That takes so much pressure off.
It really does. It fundamentally changes the entire emotional landscape of the journey. It transforms those moments of struggle from something to be feared and avoided into actual opportunities for growth.
Okay.
He further explains that relapse, specifically, isn't some kind of moral betrayal of oneself or one's goals. He says, it's the brain asking for the old, familiar rhythm.
The brain just doing its job, basically, looking for efficiency.
Precisely. Our brains are wired for efficiency, constantly seeking those established neural pathways, the familiar routines. When we introduce new behaviors, new ways of being, those pathways haven't yet formed the same strong, automatic connections.
Right, they're newer, weaker trails.
Exactly. So when stress hits or confusion or tiredness, the brain naturally defaults to what it knows best, to that well-worn path, that old rhythm. And critically, Dan argues that ignoring that request for familiarity, denying the brain's natural inclination without understanding it, leads not just to a stumble, but potentially to fracture.
Fracture. What does he mean by that?
A deeper break in trust with oneself and with the whole process. It's like you're fighting your own biology and psychology without the right tools. He strongly emphasizes most people aren't failing semaglutide. They're failing to prepare for what comes after it.
Failing to prepare for the psychological shift.
Yes, which just highlights again the immense need for a robust psychological and emotional support system, that scaffolding we talked about, not just relying on the biological intervention alone.
Wow. So this really challenges us then to consider these setbacks, these stumbles, as almost, I know, sacred moments in a way.
Sacred, yeah, I like that.
Sacred if we approach them with genuine curiosity, instead of that immediate harsh judgment that so many of us, myself included, tend to default to.
Absolutely.
It implies that these moments aren't detours from the path, they're actually integral parts of the path forward.
Precisely. And Dan makes a crucial distinction here between shame and grace. He points out the shame isn't in failing. The shame is in pretending you were supposed to be perfect.
Oof. That hits home, the pressure of perfection.
Right. Think about the immense weight of that expectation. Grace, he explains, is built when you respond to a stumble by reaching for a better tool instead of reaching for blame.
Reaching for a tool, not blame.
It's about a fundamental shift in self-perception and how we react to our own inherent humanity, our imperfections. It's consciously choosing learning and self-compassion over self-flagellation every single time.
And that, I think, really invites you listening to ask ourselves a powerful question in those moments of setback. Okay, what story am I telling myself about this failure? Is it true? And crucially, is that story actually helping me become who I want to be?
That's the key question. Is the story serving you?
Right. This isn't just about bouncing back. It's about what Dan calls failing forward. Understanding that every misstep isn't actually a failure in the traditional sense, but a deliberate opportunity for learning and adaptation that, if you let it, actually propels you closer to your goal.
Leveraging the data.
Exactly. It's about leveraging every experience, good or bad, to refine your narrative and strengthen your path forward.
Wow. We've truly journeyed through a lot today. A real deep dive.
We have.
From Adrian's initial, really disorienting moment of profound disconnect in the mirror, to getting our heads around Dan House's crucial concept of identity lag. We then shifted our perspective from seeing this as purely biological to embracing the profound power of narrative, recognizing that staying changed is fundamentally a psychological feat, not just a physical one.
Biology and narrative working together.
Or against each other.
Right. We explored the vital importance of scaffolding new routines, building that neurobiological support, and the transformative process of rewriting our internal language, giving new, more helpful meanings to old struggles.
Turning shame into memory, control into curiosity.
Exactly. And finally, we landed on this radical reframing of failure, seeing it not as an endpoint, but as invaluable, forward-moving feedback, data, not drama.
Data, not drama. I like that.
Yeah.
And if you've ever experienced that feeling we talked about at the start, where your reflection felt more like a stranger than a home, or maybe the physical shape was right, but the soul felt missing somehow, please know that you are absolutely not alone in that. You're simply in what Dan might call that quiet window of your story. A space where something more honest, something perhaps more authentic for who you are now, is waiting to arrive.
A space for something new to grow.
Exactly. It's a space where a new, more integrated self is genuinely possible. And this really begs the question for anyone in that space. What will you consciously allow to take root and flourish there? What new narrative will you choose to cultivate?
That's the work.
That is the work. And remember this, as Dan Hollis so powerfully puts it, weight loss can change your body, but only story can change your future.
Story changes the future.
And if you're not careful, he warns, biology will give you results that psychology will dismantle.
Wow, that's a stark warning.
It is, because the true goal, he reminds us, and maybe this is the most important takeaway, is that this journey isn't about eating less. It's about living more.
Living more.
It's about learning to belong to yourself again, fully and completely. Not just in how you look, but in who you fundamentally are, what you do, and how you genuinely, authentically show up in the world. Belonging to yourself, that's the real transformation.